Well, I want to go right away to the Patriot Mobile Newsmaker line. Always an honor to have our good friend from Florida's Sun Coast hanging out with us, Congressman Greg Steube. Congressman, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Congressman, we understand that a little bit later on this afternoon, you're going to be meeting with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and the Department of Government Efficiency. Honestly, there are so many things to be excited about in the upcoming administration, but I'm pretty darn excited about Doge. What about you?
Yeah, I think it'll be great, and I assume that Elon and Vivek are going to give the House kind of an overview of what their plans are strategically and kind of what their thinking is as we go into the president being sworn in on January 20th, and then how that interplays with what we do in the House. Obviously, I support massive reductions in our federal workforce, massive reductions in the bureaucracy that we have up in Washington, massive reductions in spending. We're $36 trillion in debt, and we don't have a lot to show for it. So I think that their out-of-the-box thinking, especially with Elon's experience in business, I think will really revolutionize and strategize the way that our government should function and how we should streamline how the government in Washington works.
You know, Congressman, I know that the other side is saying, oh, this is going to be devastating. It's going to take forever to get all these things through. I would disagree with that. I think you could probably go through in an afternoon and find some pretty immediate savings. I'm thinking the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, that's $500 million that we could take off the ledger.
Yeah, the Department of Education. I mean, President Trump has talked about that. I've co-sponsored bills to do away with that. Those are the type of functions that should be done at the state level, not at the federal level. Why are we paying bureaucrats an average of $100,000 a year to come up with policy when we have states that do the policy for their states, and then school boards that have the authority to implement school policy in their different counties? So I think there's a lot of areas for reform. The federal government has gotten so massive over our history, and it just keeps growing. It doesn't go back in time. I mean, even things I vote against on the floor in suspension bills is creating new task force and creating more government, and we should be going the opposite direction, especially with the debt that we are facing as a country. 10,000%
accurate, Congressman, and so I'm excited to see what they've come up with. And I know, are you going to be going into the meeting? Are you going to give Elon a list? Here are some of the things that I think we need to be getting rid of. Do you have a list ready to go?
I have had things that I've thought for years that shouldn't be done at the federal level that's a state purview, like the Department of Education. My assumption is we're going to hear from them, and then there'll probably be a short period of time for members to ask questions. I'm excited to see what they're going to come up with. And actually, once Trump takes office and they're able to get into all of the records and see the mismanagement, see the fraud, waste, and abuse. I mean, the 80,000 IRS agents that Biden just put in place, all these type of things that can be drastically reformed. I think they can look at all of these different agencies. Just the USDA has 100,000 employees. What are they all doing? And are they all here up in Washington? And one of the things that some of the FBI stuff, there's 7,000 agents that work up here. And one of the things that Kash Patel wants to do is push those agents out to actually do law enforcement in our country, which is what they're supposed to be doing. So I think there's a lot of things in every facet of our government that they will be able to look at and be able to make the determination that this needs to be trimmed. And then Congress, with President Trump's leadership, is going to have to make that decision to pass those bills to cut it so that in the future it's not brought back and grown back to the size that it is now.
Yeah, Congressman, moving on, and you mentioned, for example, Kash Patel. Again, President Trump also has a host of nominees he's already named, including Pete Hegseth. Pete and I worked together for a number of years at Fox. His wife was my executive producer. Our offices were right next door. And I'm telling you, the Pete Hegseth they're writing about using all these anonymous sources, I don't recognize that guy. That's not the guy that I knew at Fox News Channel.
Well, and he just came and spoke to the Republican Study Committee yesterday, and I think one of the points that is being lost in the mainstream media and lost to the American people is all of these, just like you said, are anonymous complaints, if you will, and allegations, if you will, that are not substantiated by fact. None of these people are willing to come forward and say this actually happened. So you have what kind of happened to Kavanaugh. You saw what happened to Matt Gaetz. The mainstream media will stop at nothing to stop President Trump to fulfill his agenda. And if the president wants Pete Hegseth at the head of the Department of Defense, then that's the president's choice to put that there. We have a Republican Senate, and the Republican Senate should heed to the president for him to get his nominee and to be able to do the things that President Trump ran on. President Trump got elected by the American people to do the type of things that Pete Hegseth and his other nominees are going to do in these different agencies. And of course, the mainstream media and the swamp will try to do anything to try to prevent that from happening, and we can't let that happen.
No, we can't. And I really do hope, and I'm frustrated by some of the things coming out of the Senate. As a matter of fact, here is Joni Ernst. Guys, let's play cut number 4, please.
Okay, it doesn't sound on your answer that you've gotten to a yes. If I'm wrong about that, correct me. And if that is the case, it sounds to me as if the hearing will be critical for his nomination. Am I right about that?
I think you are right. I think for a number of our senators, they want to make sure that any allegations have been cleared, and that's why we have to have a very thorough vetting process. And that's why I was happy to sit down with Pete and have that conversation with him yesterday. So again, all I will say at this time is that we did have a very thorough discussion over a number of those issues, and the vetting will continue, I am certain, through the next month or so until we approach that hearing date.
And Congressman, you heard the senator there, and there's some speculation that she actually wants the job of defense secretary. But my point is, this is pretty black and white to me, and correct me if I'm wrong. If President Trump wants the nominee, he ought to get the nominee.
I agree 100%. If that's who President Trump wants to put in those different places, he should have the authority as president to do that. Republican senators should stand behind him. If there's criminal conduct that was going on and there's a record of that, that's different. There's no criminal conduct here. These allegations are from anonymous sources. There's no factual basis for a lot of these things, because one of the rights that we have as Americans is to confront your accuser in our Constitution. And you can't even do that because these allegations are anonymous. So I think you absolutely should have the hearing. I'm very encouraged by the fact that Pete is willing to fight and continue, not just give up, because that's exactly what the mainstream media and the swamp want him to do, is throw all the stuff at him and he quit, and then they go to the next person, and then that person's going to be the target, and then they're going to try to throw all this stuff at them until they quit. And we can't let that happen. And I think that it needs to move forward, have a Senate hearing. And if there's not any factual basis to back any of this up, and again, some of this is personal. A lot of this is personal things that occurred. And we're talking about somebody that's going to be leading the Department of Defense. We should talk about their military service, what they plan on doing in that position. And obviously the president has a lot of trust in Pete, which is why he named him. And I think that should go a long way with the senators.
You know, and not only that, all of these folks, these Republicans voted for Merrick Garland, and if they can vote for Merrick Garland, I don't care who Trump is putting up, they can vote for that individual.
Yeah, Merrick Garland, Austin, all these people that have destroyed our military, Blinken and Secretary of State, who has a horrible record as secretary that was in charge of Afghanistan. That's okay. And none of these people have been held accountable for any of the things that they've done. And suddenly, because Trump gets elected, the swamp is trying to push back. So I think we need to continue. I'm glad to hear that Pete is not willing to quit. He's going to move forward and put the senators on the board and let them be accountable to the American people in their districts for refusing to move along with what the president wants to do and get his agenda done. Well
said. Well, Congressman, we're going to leave it there. I know you've got a super busy day, and looking forward to hearing what happens in that meeting later this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.